Am I the butthole for leaving the restaurant after my sister flirted with my girlfriend and made her uncomfortable? I've had this account for a bit, but I prefer lurking instead of posting. My 19M sister Hailey 20F, not real name, is a very open and flirty person. She's never put a label on her sexuality, but she has said she's attracted to everyone. Ever since we were in high school, she'd often flirt with girls I was interested in. She'd also flirt with my friends when they'd come over to hang out. Sometimes Hailey would even come into my room without knocking just to talk to them. It was very uncomfortable, and some of my friends even stopped coming over to my house because of it. This made me really angry, and I told our parents 45M and 42F, but they'd always say I'm being homophobic and to leave her alone, so she'd always get away with it. A few months after she graduated, she moved out of the house, and I haven't had to deal with her flirting with my friends anymore. 7 months ago, I met my now girlfriend Layla 18F, and we really hit it off. We've been together a little over 4 months. One thing to note about Layla is that she's really shy, so she's never voices any concerns until after the fact. Well, I really wanted her to meet my parents, so we set up a quick dinner at a nice restaurant on Tuesday night. Without even telling me, my parents invited Hailey, who was almost 30 minutes late. For the better part of the dinner, she would constantly flirt with my girlfriend. She'd give Layla compliments about her clothing, body, facial features, and even offer her number multiple times. My parents would just laugh along with her antics, saying it's just how she normally is. But I could clearly see Layla was uncomfortable, so I paid my side of the bill and took her home. When we got to her house, I asked if I could spend the night, and she said yes, and that's where I've been for the past few days. My parents and Hailey have been blowing up my phone, calling me all sorts of names, which has me thinking I was in the wrong. I haven't answered any of my sister's messages, but I told my mom where I am. When I asked Layla about it, she said the compliments were nice at first, but she got uncomfortable. So am I the butthole for making a big deal out of my sister flirting with my girlfriend? Edit. I didn't put my reasoning, sorry. My parents think I'm an butthole for ignoring my sister's messages, and an even bigger butthole for walking out of the restaurant. They say I was entitled and rude. Does this make me butthole? Edit 2. Thank you so much to everyone who commented, since there's a lot of you in such a short time. Any advice given is greatly appreciated, even if I can't reply to them all. I'm going to message my parents later tonight and let them know I'll be going no contact with them until both of them and my sister apologize to my girlfriend. I'll also be mentioning how Hailey's behavior is sexual harassment and that they're enabling her. Whether they apologize or not is up to them, but I refuse to let my GF go without one. Again, thank you all. Update. Sorry this update took a few days. I'm still reeling from everything that happened. First of all, I want to thank all the people who left comments and judgments. I won't say much as I'm sure you all want to know what happened. It's a lot. I'm still disgusted and don't really know how to feel about all this. Friday night, I messaged my mom and dad to let them know I wouldn't be conversing with them unless Layla was given an apology. Up to this point, that still hasn't been received, and I don't think it ever will. I also let them know I'd be stopping by on Saturday to pick up my things from the house. Well, Saturday morning I go over to the house and bring my GF's dad, who will call Carl to help me. Sitting on the porch is my sister, who tells me immediately she wants to talk. Anyways, we go inside and sit down, which is when she says she has to tell me something without me freaking out. Basically, in a much more dimmed-down version, my sister tells me she has had feelings for me since high school, which is when I started going to the gym and slimming out a lot more. She said the main reason she flirted with all my friends is because she wanted to divert her attraction somewhere else. According to her, this is also the reason she moved out so quickly, because she couldn't stand being around me and knowing she couldn't have me. I left. I didn't get any of my stuff, and honestly, I don't know if I'll go back to get it. I blocked my sister on everything as soon as I got back to my GF's house, and my mom keeps messaging me telling me to apologize for walking out again. I don't know how to feel. I'm absolutely disgusted. I feel like throwing up all the time, and I'm not sure how I'm supposed to get up and go to work tomorrow like everything's normal. I haven't told my GF or her dad yet, and I don't know if I'm going to. I have no idea if my mom or dad knows, but even thinking about it makes my head hurt. This is so much worse than I thought it was. What the F? I know a lot of people might start commenting about how this is fake, and I don't really care. I wish it was. Update 2. So it's been a week. I'm not sure how many people are going to see this, but whoever does, hi. After my last post, I didn't answer many comments because I was still going through the motions of what was said. I wanted to get a quick update out last week, but things got in the way, which led us to here. Last Tuesday, I messaged my parents telling them everything my sister had told me. It wasn't until Thursday I got a reply where they called me all sorts of names. They said I was perverted, a liar, a man-child, etc. However, after messaging back and forth with them for a while, it came out on my mom's side that my sister confirmed my story and wanted me to say it was false because neither of them wanted to believe it. It's safe to say I have no intention of talking to either of them for a long time. I told my GF everything on Tuesday as well. She was a lot more supportive than I initially thought, so that worked out pretty well. On Friday, we told her father and we started looking for apartments to move in together. As for all my things back at my parents' house, my GF's dad and a few of my friends went to pick up my stuff without me. I gave them a list of all the necessary things. My friends don't know why I moved out, but just that it was serious and not to ask. Which leads us to today. I know a few people on my update post commented about this being fake, and as much as I wish it wasn't, this is the hell I'm living in. Over the past week, I've been looking back to my sister and I's relationship and realized a lot of stuff that isn't normal. I'd give examples, but I just want this to be over with. Thanks for the support, and this'll probably be the last update. Update 3. For a while, I forgot I made this post, until it showed up on my Instagram feed a couple weeks ago. Figured I owed you all a final close to what happened. To be honest, it's not much. If anyone remembers, I first posted asking if I was tough for leaving a restaurant after my no longer consider her this, but sister openly flirted with my GF. Well, turns out it was a hell of a lot worse, and it came out that my sister had feelings towards me. I basically left home to live with my absolutely amazing girlfriend and her dad for a while. So on to the update. My GF and I are still together, and let me just say she makes every single day worth it, and I can't imagine my life without her. I'm so lucky to wake up every morning and just be able to stare at her and remember that she's mine. She's so incredibly smart that I've seen her outwit our incredibly stubborn cat several times. Also, yeah, we got a cat. Silly little orange furball named Mikey with way too much energy for such a small body. He keeps trying to eat the fish out of the tank lol. Pretty sure he has 2 functioning brain cells and that's it. I'm truly living the life. She and I eventually found an apartment for us a couple towns over. It's close to my girlfriend's college, and I got a pretty decent job here to support the both of us. My girlfriend's dad, who is an absolute saint, helped with the first and last deposit just to help us out, and I can't thank him enough. He's joked a few times about me calling him dad, so I guess that's where we are. Lol. As for my parents and sister, I haven't heard anything from my parents, except a few voicemails when I first moved from unknown numbers. One of my aunts told me that the truth came out a few months after I moved and the whole family turned on them. Apparently they left town, but I'm not entirely sure where they ended up. As for my sister, if you can even call her, that apparently stuck around towns for several months, but ended up spiraling into several substances and vanished with a new boyfriend she got. I don't know where she is now, and honestly, I couldn't care less. She isn't my sister anymore and hasn't been for a while now. So that brings my story to a close. I'm sorry if it wasn't as exciting as people were expecting, and I apologize that it took me this long to remember lol. Again, I want to thank everyone who sent such supportive messages and advice on what I should do. There were several people who sent me private messages for an update, so this is for you, I guess. Anyways, now I'm gonna go make my GF some green tea because she's been absolutely obsessed with it lately lol. Next story. Am I the butthole for feeling like my eldest daughter should be treated the same as my real children? When Mim45 daughter 13 was born, I immediately felt that something was obviously amiss. She was blonde-haired and blue-eyed, which was extremely unlikely for a child of myself and my ex-wife of 39. I am very Mediterranean, and I have olive skin, dark eyes, and dark hair. My ex-wife has brown eyes and relatively dark brown hair. Her skin is barely lighter than mine. The baby also clearly bore no resemblance to me or anyone in my family at all. I had been having misgivings about my ex too, and she seemed too quick to express surprise and make excuses. Still though, I didn't want to throw away my marriage over what could have been my own misunderstanding of genetics, and so I signed the birth certificate. I instantly knew that I was going to have a paternity test done, but something else surprised me. When I brought our little girl home, I still fell in love with her. It felt just like bringing my Sonam 14 home, and looking at her, I still just saw her as an innocent, beautiful little baby. We bonded. The paternity test came back negative, as I suspected it would, and I decided that our marriage was over. I still loved our little girl though. My then wife did everything that she could to drag out the divorce and refused to separate or move out. My daughter's biological father, every bit as blonde and blue-eyed as I suspected, turned out to want nothing to do with her or my ex. He was already married with his own family, and his only focus was preventing the situation from blowing back on himself too much. My ex went totally nuts when both I and her affair partner rejected her, and she made some very unfortunate decisions. To make a long story short, she ended up with prison time for crimes including identity theft, assault with a deadly weapon, and grand theft auto when she stole credit cards and forged documents for both of us, and when she stole her affair partner's car and tried to run him over with it. I ended up with custody of our kids, with the affair partner never even attempting to establish any kind of paternity rights. I didn't want to press the issue myself, as I couldn't deny that I had bonded with this child, even knowing that she wasn't my real daughter. I had been shunning my ex-wife as best I could and trying to move on with life after she was finally out of the house. It wasn't long before I got together with and married my current wife of 34, and we've since had another 2 children. M10, F8. My eldest daughter is a total daddy's girl, and we have a wonderful relationship. She always feels loved, and I treat her the same as my other kids. Even though she obviously stands out, my family accepts her too, or at least that's what I thought. I work for my father's company, and the other day we were out talking about the future and his will, and he was talking about what money, assets, etc. he wanted to leave to whom, including his grandchildren, and I noticed that my older daughter had been left out. I mentioned it to him, and he said, "It's nice what you've done for daughter's name, but you have real children, and obviously they should come first." I interrupted him, and I told him that she is my real daughter, and that I thought she should be treated equally. He just paused and looked at me for a moment, and he said, "I guess you feel how you feel," before he noticed I was still about to argue with him, and he shrugged and moved the conversation on to things about work and my siblings. I was too polite to try to force the matter at the time, but it sort of stuck with me. My father isn't the type of man to harp on a point, and I am certain that he's content to have said his piece and would let the matter drop. He could certainly tell that what he said upset me, and so I doubt he'd bring it up again. Frankly, he sort of raised me the same way. At the time, I was shocked, because he's always seemed to accept my daughter as a part of the family. He buys her gifts for her birthday and for Christmas, and he makes her feel welcome. But, thinking about it, he really is just a kind, polite, and generous man in a lot of ways. He will and has bought Christmas gifts for high school friends or significant others if he knew they were coming, and the same for other gift-giving occasions. He's generally very hospitable to anyone his friends or family bring around, so I thought that maybe it was just that, and I misinterpreted. My wife is Asian, and so my eldest daughter always stands out. She's thin and blonde and blue-eyed, unlike pretty much anyone else in my family. And she's taller than any of the other girls or even most of the women, really, so I'm aware that she might look like the neighbor kid visiting or something. My wife loves her, and I know that she 100% accepts her as one of our kids, and she has been a great stepmom. I talk to my own mother, though, and while she's definitely closer to my daughter than my father, they interact a lot more. And she includes my daughter with the other kids, other girls, in family traditions and activities. I got a little bit of the same vibe from her. She was much more diplomatic, but it seems like she may also sort of consider my daughter to be sort of a guest unfortunate orphan I'm hosting or something like that. She pointed out that I can make my own will however I want. My daughter knows that she isn't biologically mine. That would have been hard to hide, even if we'd really had the opportunity. She doesn't want anything to do with either of her bio parents though. She's seen her bio dad perhaps a handful of times in her entire life, and I don't even think he can remember her middle name. He seems to have pretty successfully kept his family together and his wife from leaving him, but he definitely doesn't want any involvement. My ex-wife continued to spiral for a long while, and she lives in another state with another man and her own new family at this point. She mercifully rarely makes contact. I've never really tried to go after either of them for money. I don't need it, and it's not a pot I want to stir. My siblings are mostly supportive, if a little bit mixed on the issue. Some of them say that they could never raise the child of a partner's affair, but all of them say that they love and accept their niece. I just can't get over the way that I feel distant and upset about what my father said though. He's an extremely kind and generous man, and he's always taken care of his family. He's given me opportunities and a lifestyle that I could never have achieved without him. I love him and I look up to him. Maybe that's why I feel sort of, I don't know, betrayed. It feels wrong that she's the only one of his grandchildren to be left out of his will, apparently because he doesn't consider her a real grandchild. Intellectually, I can accept that he's technically correct. But it feels wrong. She is my daughter. Am I wrong though? Am I just being entitled and unreasonable here? Am I the butthole? Update. Just a small update. Thanks for the comments and wishes. It really put a lot of things into perspective, and it confirmed to me that I needed to say something. Some people seemed surprised at the way I let my daughter's bio parents off the hook, so to speak. The main reason I've never tried to go after my ex or her affair partner for child support is that my daughter is more important than money. I'm not struggling at all, and I have the support I need. More importantly though, I have my daughter, even though the affair partner didn't apparently want anything to do with her. My lawyer did mention way back in the day that either he or my wife, being her biological parents, could have a strong case for seeking custody. I know I'm biased, but her bio dad seems like a huge butthole, and I know he doesn't care about her. I wouldn't put it past him to try to get custody just to duck out of paying child support though, if his hand was forced, and the idea of her having to go stay with him is just something I don't even want to think about. Kind of the same thing when her mom got out of prison. She seemed like she was very quick to go shack up with her new guy, and she seemed willing to let the matter lie, so I did the same. The fact that neither of them tried to get her, or, in my ex's case, the way she hasn't even bothered to keep much contact with our son, either tells me more than everything I need to know about the kind of parents they are would be. They only seem interested in their pre-existing new families respectively. I wouldn't want to try to back them into trying to take custody. With my daughter being 13, it's possible that we've sort of run out the clock on that matter. But it's still not drama we need or a risk worth taking. In better and more important news though, I talked with my dad. I met with my father for lunch, which was easy enough as he's around most days and we could sync up sometime. I mentioned that I wanted to talk about my daughter not being in his will, and I told him that even if it meant dividing what was being left to me or my other kids, I felt it was really important for her to be included. I also mentioned, as I felt, and as a lot of people pointed out, that it would be devastating for her to find out that she'd been excluded after his death. My father agreed that that was a really good point, and he said that she is a lovely girl, that he does love her, and that he wouldn't want to add extra pain or bitterness to her life, especially at such a time. Also, it had gotten around to him that I'd been sort of polling my siblings a little bit, and I think my mom talked to him some, and he said, "This is obviously very important to you. You're my son. I can just change it. It's not so much money anyway." And he was right. The amounts of money being left to individual grandchildren aren't massive, but the gesture and the thought are what's most meaningful. Mostly everything is going to my mom and or us, his kids, anyway. Really, there was no reason for me to expect him to have been stubborn or hard-hearted about any of this. It was just something that we needed to talk about. My father reiterated that everyone loves my daughter and that she'll always be family and always have a home. He has a gold bracelet that he has worn somewhat occasionally over the years, and he mentioned that my daughter thought it was pretty. When she was very little, she noticed it on his wrist and said that jewelry was for girls. He laughed and explained to her that sometimes boys wear jewelry too. She thought it was nice, and he let her try it on even though it was way too big for her wrist. She was a little toddler then. I didn't know about that moment between them, and I thought it was really sweet that he remembered. He said that he was going to leave her the bracelet and a note, and that as far as money goes, she'd get the same share as the rest of my kids. So we had a nice lunch, and we both felt better for it. Nothing too dramatic, but really the best way things could have gone. Thanks everyone for confirming that I wasn't being crazy and confirming that I needed to talk to my father and set things right. Next story. Am I the butthole for not wanting to date a police officer? 2 months ago, there was a domestic dispute in my building. I-25F was coming home when I noticed 2 police officers waiting for the elevator. I would have waited for the next one, but we only have 2 elevators, and one was broken. I rode up with the officers, and I was surprised to see that we all got off on the same floor, mine. Apparently, the disturbance was the unit next to mine. I've only lived here for 3 months, so I don't know any of my neighbors. I didn't think too much of it at the time, and I went into my unit and closed the door. About 30 minutes later, I hear a knock at my door. It was one of the police officers that I had ridden up with on the elevator. He asked me to open the door, but I was hesitant, so I asked if we could just talk through the closed door. He showed me his badge through the peephole to, I guess, make me feel safer, but that didn't help. He told me that he needed to see my identification because I might be a witness to what occurred in the unit next to mine. I told him that I saw nothing, so I wouldn't be a big help. He told me that either I talk to him now, or I have to go to the police station in the morning, which could take all day. I'm a student. I couldn't take off a whole day to talk about an incident, so I agreed. He didn't come inside my place. We chatted at my door. He asked me for ID, so I gave him my driver's license. He wrote down my information, my number as well, and told me that he would be in contact. 2 days later, I spotted him at my building after coming home from class. He asked me how my neighbors were doing, and I said fine, and tried to get into my building. He stopped me and said that he thought he and I had chemistry the night we met, and he asked me out. I told him that I had a boyfriend lie, and I sidestepped him into my building. The next day, I get a call from my grandmother. She tells me that a nice police officer came by and was asking very personal questions about me. The person she describes sounds exactly like the police officer who asked me out. My license has my grandmother's address. I was living with her before, and I haven't had time to go and change it. At this point, I was freaking out. I told her not to talk to him, and not to answer the door if he comes back. 2 weeks ago, I'm walking home from class, and I jaywalked to get to my building. I hear someone calling my name, so I turn around, and it's the police officer again. He tells me that he could fine me for jaywalking because it's illegal, but he won't if I go out with him. I told him again that I'm seeing someone, but he tells me that my grandmother told him that I was single. I told him that it's a new relationship, so she wouldn't know. He said that he would hold off on the jaywalking ticket, but not for long. It's been a few weeks since that confrontation, but I see him pretty often. I live in a safe neighborhood, but he seems to always be parked somewhere near my school or apartment building. I'm on a student visa. I'm Canadian. I can't afford to have a ticket on my record, but I'm also very worried that this police officer will escalate this situation if I don't go out with him. I told one of my closest friends about this, and she told me that what this police officer was doing was romantic, and I'm in butthole for not going out with him? Update. I just wanted to start off by thanking those who responded to my last post. Most of you were very sympathetic and stressed that I needed to do something because this wasn't going to resolve on its own. Honestly, I didn't realize it had gotten so bad until I read my own post lol. I got a few horrible DMs after I posted a few days ago, so I hid out for a while. I didn't want to be too specific in my last post, but I realized that my vagueness made it harder for people to give me advice. I'm located on the East Coast in a small college town, 50,000 people. There are less than 60 police officers. From social media accounts, I was able to find 2 other police officers' brother and cousin that shared the last name of the officer who has been begging me to date him. I first interacted with the police officer in late March, early April, so this has been going on for a couple of months now. Some of you were concerned about my grandmother after the officer paid her a visit. She moved out in May, which is why I moved out. She lives in a senior's home hours away from me now, so she's fine. The campus is pretty much empty now that spring semester finished in May. My friends are gone. The only reason I stayed for the summer was because I secured a student research position. I'm kicking myself now for staying, but there was no way I would pass up on this opportunity. The morning after I wrote the post, the officer came knocking on my door. He kept singing my name while he knocked really creepy. I didn't answer. He came back a few hours later. I'm ashamed to say that I hid in my apartment until Monday morning. I was planning on calling the domestic abuse line in my area, which was a great suggestion some of you gave, but I think his visit frazzled me. He had never gone as far as to knock on my door again after that first night we met. I walked to campus yesterday morning, and I was still really alert and scared. I ran into one of my professors from last semester, and she could see that I wasn't okay, so she took me to her office. It all came tumbling out after that. I told her everything about what had been happening. She was super sympathetic. I told her the officer's name, and she didn't look surprised at all. According to her, he's done this before to multiple women. Some women have filed complaints, but nothing has happened because his dad is well connected. The officer has a pattern of escalating once complaints are filed. I told my professor that I was planning on seeking out the victim advocacy group, but she cautioned me against it. Apparently, when spring semester ends, a lot of people take the summer off, and the offices are staffed with locals. The sister of the officer that has been harassing me currently works at the one I was thinking of calling. She stayed with me while I called another advocacy group a bit farther out of town. She also connected me to a lawyer just in case, also out of town. The professor got her son 23M to walk with me to and from campus. I felt guilty about that, but he said he was glad to help. My professor told me that the officer targets women who live alone, seem to be alone all the time, which is definitely me this summer. This will be my last update, but I just wanted to thank everyone for giving me the strength to tell someone. I hope you guys like this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share, and subscribe the channel James Stories.